All right, let's keep graphing here. Amplitude, 2. Period always starts at 2 pi, and then you divide by whatever this number is here. This number is a 1/2. To divide by 1/2, we flip and multiply, so that's 2 pi times 2. So here our period is 4 pi. All right, let's see. We're dealing with a cosine graph because that's positive. Cosine starts high, and then it's going to end here at 4 pi. Should really put the 4 pi there. Should put it on the axis at 2. Halfway between 0 and 4 pi is 2 pi. That's an easy one to figure out. And here, the sine graph will be low, like so. And then again, this one worked out pretty nicely. Halfway between 0 and 2 pi is 1 pi. We'll be on the axis there. And halfway between 2 pi and 4 pi is 3 pi. And we'll be on the axis there. So here's our cosine graph. Looks like so. Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of these. So this sheet that I have, normally I would use it in a classroom, and I would do pretty much the problems that I've done, and then I would have the students do the rest of them. So I'm going to skip a couple of these, but there are 2 on the last page that I want to do. So let's go down to this one maybe. I like to do the ones with the negatives here. Our amplitude, 3. Amplitude's always a positive number. Period. 2 pi divided by whatever that number is. That's pi. All right, so again, a sine graph starts on the axis. A sine graph ends on the axis, ends at our period. Halfway between 0 and pi is half of a pi on the axis. Halfway between 0 and half of a pi is a quarter of a pi. Pi over 4. And be careful here, this is a negative, so we're going to be low. Easy thing to forget. Easy to look at your amplitude being 3 and going high. And then halfway between pi over 2 and pi is 3 pi over 4. And that's where we'll be high. Right there. Alright, so we started at the origin, we go down, we go up, we go back down. Okay, let's do 2 more. Amplitude, 5. Now this one usually freaks students out when they look at it. They see that pi in there and they think, oh boy, this is going to be a nasty one. Turns out having the pi in there is a really, really good thing. Hopefully when we're done this problem you'll agree with me, because to find the period I always start at 2 pi and then I divide by whatever that number is. That number is a pi, so that's just the number 2. All the pi's go away. That's a really good thing. Alright, cosine graph starts high. There's 5. Cosine graph ends high. And in this case it's ending at 2. We don't have crazy pi's on our axis this time. Halfway between 0 and 2 is 1. And that's where our graph will be low. Halfway between 0 and 1 is a half. That's where we'll hit the axis. And halfway between 1 and 2 is 1.5, or 3 halves, I would write it. And we hit the axis there. So I hope you agree with me that having the pi there is actually a really good thing, because it gets rid of all the pi's on the numbers on the axis. Makes them much easier to compute. Graph looks like so. Something on my table there. All right, last one, and then we'll move on to 10.3. Amplitude, 3. Period. And again, this fraction tends to bother people. You're going to take 2 pi, divide by a half. To divide, we flip and multiply. So that turns out to be 4 pi, which I think we had in a previous problem. All right, sine starts on the origin right there, ends on the axis, so it's going to end at 4 pi. Again, these numbers are pretty easy. Halfway between 0 and 4 pi is 2 pi. Will be on the axis there. Halfway between 0 and 2 pi is 1 pi. And halfway between 2 pi and 4 pi is 3 pi. And then the only thing we got to deal with, this is a negative, so we're going to be low. Another 3 right there. And here we'll be high. We'll be at 3. All right, and then we draw our nice smooth wave. All right, so that ends 10.1 and 10.2. Really what happens in 10.1 is you deal with the amplitude. In 10.2, we deal with the period. I chose to do them in one foul swoop. Next, we'll move on to 10.3, and we'll see about something called a phase shift, and we'll see what that means and what that does to the graph.